Today we're in Fountain Valley, California, and we're visiting the home offices of Microscale. If you've ever painted a brass model train and needed it decaled, most likely you've received one of these envelopes in the mail with your order from Microscale. So let's go on inside and see what's involved in this process.
Welcome to Monday Morning Express. Well, as you've already seen, and we promised, it's time to head to Microscale. Roland, tell us a little bit. I know you enjoyed your time out there.
Yeah, as you saw there in the intro, we're going to be at Microscale. We had a wonderful time there in their facility. Nice, actually quite a big warehouse there that they have, and producing all of these wonderful decals that if you're any type of painter, you absolutely love these, using these. They do such a fine job. We're going to see it from the conception, the graphic side of it, all the way down into the printing side of it, the packaging, the cutting, even some of the finishing products that customers can order that they use and manufacture there at Microscale.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things we just assume like magically gets in this package. Like, what does go into making them? So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're going to talk with Scott out there. Scott, he's just a very hospitable person and certainly appreciate the tour that he gave us.
Yeah, that was really nice. We know our viewers are going to love it. And we're going to have the sit down with Boyd and Juan Zuloage. That'll be kind of fun talking with them. And also, we're going to have the first train show treasures section. So today, just a few minutes and kind of quickly identifying damage on a loco. So if you have to make a fast decision on a purchase, this is one of the #1 things you're going to want to look for. So we know you're going to enjoy the episode today. Let's get started with Microscale.
Here we are with Scott Williams, production manager for Microscale. And Scott, thanks for letting us in the office for here today. And we're going to take a look at some of your processes and what goes on into the making of these decals that we use in the railroad industry. But tell us a little bit about yourself. How long have you been with the company?
Well, I've been with Microscale for 15 years now. I've been running the production for like the last 12 years and running the retail department for the last 8 years.
So you see a lot that goes on here.
I do a lot in Microscale for sure.
Very cool. Now, what about Microscale itself? How long has it been around? When did it get started?
The Crissell family bought it in 1933 and the Williams family bought it from the Crissell family in 2001.
Wow, so Microscale's been around for a long time.
A long time. They've been producing aircraft and railroad decals for a very long time, since the beginning of printing water slide decals.
Beautiful. And I know we can go to your site at microscale.com, obviously, and customers can go on there and see even the stock levels that you have of particular decals for a particular road that they're looking for.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. We have search engines by railroad name, and then we try to keep the quantities updated, reflect what's out in our stock.
And as far as scale-wise, what are the different scales that you guys are able to make decals for?
We are making N-scale, HO, and a smaller selection of O-scale depending on sellability and demand.
All right. But you're still coming out with new product. I think it's like monthly.
Yeah, every month we try to come up with a brand new railroad decal. We do offer aircraft, but railroad is the heart of Microscale for sure.
Okay, very good. And most likely some of our customers, they'll have questions about, what if I need something done in a custom decal? You even do that,
Yeah, we have full custom production. Vicki Hayes is our sales rep.
Okay.
She deals with all the custom work. We have minimum of 250 pieces.
Okay.
We will do any color that's out there. We'll match samples, we'll Pantone books, the FS books, all the global matching books. We will match any color.
You guys go the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
So it's quite a process. We're going to go ahead and let's get started. And as we go along, you'll be able to tell us what's involved with this entire, the scope of everything, and then in the very end, actually how it's packaged together along with the instructions.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. We're looking forward to seeing it, and we'll take you on the tour right now. You're going to show us step one here and what's taking place on our screen here with Laura Long.
Okay, when we research all the information for a railroad decal, we compile it all together and we bring it into our art director, Laura Long, where she gets all the separation, meets all of our printing standards, gets it so we can produce the best quality decal. and then she starts to lay it up in a master run. That we'll put a master run so we can get the most productivity out of the run of our railroad decals.
So would all of these be assembled together in one packet? Is that what that is then?
No, this will be on one production run. We'll print it all at one time to get as many of our railroad decals that are out of stock back in stock and produce them the most effective way.
Okay, very nice. So accuracy is important, I presume?
Yes, absolutely. And Laura has been with the company for 40 years and really has knowledge of art and how we need to produce the decal through screen printing, because it's a lot different between a digital file and then taking it to the press and printing it, screen printing. So she adjusts line widths and trapping from one color to another, and she has great knowledge of that.
Excellent. So Laura does a lot of checking.
She does.
Tell us what we got going on here at this table. We have a lighted table in front of us with some artwork on it.
So this is our process of film before we go to shoot screens for printing, and we print one color at a time. So each one of these films represents a color that will be laid down in the printing process. If you take the Canadian Pacific Railway, you can see that this will print the red, and then we go on to black, and multiple colors on top of that. To produce the decal, and it's one color at a time, so it's one film at a time.
So, because when we go out to the printing press, and we'll see that, how one color is run through, and then later on the other color is added.
Yeah, we print that one color, and then we pull the screen, put it on the next screen that's in sequence, because they need to trap over each other properly, and lighter colors print first, darker colors print later in the run.
Scott, we're here in front of this big contraption. I want to say it's a photo booth, but maybe it's not. Tell us what we got here with these.
Well, this is our exposure booth, and this is where we expose all the screens. We showed you the process of producing the film. This is where we take the film and we expose into our cap film, which is this red film, in this exposure booth.
All right. Lay it down in here.
We lay it down in there. We close this down.
Okay.
We shut the curtain. And then we hit the exposure.
The magic happens.
And the magic happens.
Very cool.
And then when we get done with the exposure, we take it over to a exposure stop, where it stops the exposure, and then we rinse it out with hot water, and it starts to show the image, and everything that wasn't exposed by the light rinses away, and that's where the details, and I could show you on a screen that
and
we
what
just
was the lighting you said in there?
It's a 5,000K bulb.
5,000K,
Yeah.
okay.
And it runs for about 30 to 45 seconds, depending on the image that we're exposing.
Excellent. And how long do they last, these images that you have here?
It will run anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 impressions on our press before it starts to break down the stencil.
Okay, so then you got to recreate a new one.
Yeah,
then.
exactly.
Okay, so quite the process, and not too cheap to do that, I assume.
No, it's an expensive process and timely, and it takes a lot of detail in microscale to hold all that small detail on the decals.
Scott, we're at one last station before we go to the printing press. Tell us what's happening here with this light table.
In this stage, we do the final preps before it hits the printing press. We'll go in and touch up any imperfections in the stencil, make sure all the images are the way we want them before it hits the press, and then we'll tape up the borders of the press so the ink can have a reservoir to sit in while it goes through the screen printing process.
So this is your last check before you go to print.
Exactly.
Okay, well let's take it on to print and see how it works. Tell us a little bit about this monstrosity in front of us.
Well, this is our Sakurai SD72A. It's a brand new piece of equipment we just got on the floor. It's a phenomenal screen printing press. We print, like I said before, one color at a time. We can run it at speeds up to 2,500 sheets per hour. Normally we're running around 1,200 to 1,500 sheets per hour because microscale's registration is very tight registration.
Right.
And our printers need to have that ability to keep everything in tight registration.
Now, is there a specific color that you run first?
Yeah,
Kind of talked about
we
it?
start with a clear base or a carrier base that allows you to, once this paper hits water, the film will release, and
Right.
that's when you apply it to your model.
Okay.
The material we use has to be controlled by humidity. We have the room set at about 60% humidity. Temperature we try to keep about 70 degrees at all times through the year. This is our feeder. It comes into the feeder, comes up the feeding board into the under the up to a cylinder that we can't see right now, and then the squeegee will stroke the screen that's moving back and forth, one color at a time, and then it delivers into our air drying system.
Okay. So is it printing black right now? Is that what's in there?
Right, black, it's on its final color, and black's always
Okay.
the final color unless you have a extra clear on top, or sometimes a second silver, sometimes a second white, but
Okay.
mostly black is our last
Mostly
color.
black. Okay, and so you mentioned about humidity control in this room.
Yeah.
Now, when we get the decals, the final product, it's important that we worry about humidity also, right? Because that can affect the decal.
Absolutely, you want to keep your decals sealed away from sunlight and really dry weather.
And if you do that, they can last for years.
They could last for years if you maintain them properly. Sunlight and dry weather will break down a lot of things.
Yeah.
So, and our decals are definitely susceptible to that.
We have the final product coming out here. Tell us what you look for now.
Okay, when it's coming off of the printing press with the final color black, we're checking about every fifth sheet to make sure that the registration marks are staying stable, make sure all the images aren't being
Turn this a little bit this way, maybe. Okay.
aren't getting hit by any dust
Right.
or any type of smears. Just a quick glance, and then we put it down and grab another one.
So it's good quality control.
Yeah. So this sheet looks good. It looks as good as the last one I picked up, and if we just randomly check every fifth sheet, you can maintain good quality decals. And then they feed right into the drying system where they'll air dry and be retrieved at the other end.
Okay, so once it's off the press, into the air dry system, I see you got fans. What else do you do?
And once it's finished drying, and this is the last color, so this job will be done.
Okay.
We'll get a final count, and we'll send it out to the outside warehouse where we cut it up and package it.
Okay, and tell me a little bit about the control in here as far as the misting.
Well, the paper is a water slide paper, so it has to be controlled by humidity. We keep this room stable at anywhere from 60 to 70% humidity, and the temperature range the same. I could show you how the system works.
Go ahead.
And you can see that we shoot out a fine mist of water, and it creates a fog and brings up the humidity in a room, and that really helps with good, strong registration, keeps the paper stable.
Now we've got these huge sheets here in stacks of 100, you said?
Yeah, if it's a large quantity, we'll break them in stacks of 100, so
Okay.
it's easier to bag.
Okay.
And then we take them over to our guillotine where we cut
All
them
right.
into the shapes that the decals need to be. You want to do a cut there, Jay?
All right, let's see what we got.
So we take it, stack it in there nice and tight.
It's programmed. All right, very good. Look at that. Is there a set amount of cuts per sheet?
It depends on the
stack?
layup and how they're laid up. This one is laid up so it's really efficient that we can program it. Some of the decals, they come in different sizes, so a lot of it we have to do our kind of by hand. We can't use the programming system. We have to kind of eyeball it and measure it out because of the different size decals. You know, if we're doing an O scale decal next to an N scale decal,
Sure.
it obviously takes some precision cutting, and the program really can't read into that.
So it's good that it's all programmed ahead of time. It knows exactly where to cut it, and
Yep.
and that's important when you're dealing with stuff that is
When you're dealing
so
with
fine.
large volume too,
Large volume,
it definitely
yeah.
makes it more efficient.
Well, he's got to be careful, I guess, not to put his hands in there. He's still got all of his fingers.
Well, luckily it has safety devices, so he
Okay.
would not be able to release the blade. Plus, to activate the blade, you have to use both hands.
Very
to
nice.
push it, so.
Excellent. Hold up all the fingers. You're good?
Nah.
He's good. All right, safety first. We're in a different section of the factory here. It's a little quieter over here, which is good.
Yeah.
Tell us what's taking place here towards the end of the process.
This is where we take all of Microscale's railroad decals and we stuff them into envelopes with the instruction sheets. We have a Santa Fe here with its instruction sheet and the envelope with the printed header. Back on our offset press, we print the headers. We get bulk blank envelopes pre-printed from a company, and then we print the headers per decal.
What's inside? Right?
Like we have with the Santa Fe. And then we run this little automatic envelope stuffer, and we have decals that come in, and then instruction sheets land on top of that, and they go get fed right into these envelopes.
See it work. Well, that's all right.
So that definitely makes it more efficient than
Absolutely.
hand stuffing.
Having someone do it all day long.
It would take a lot of labor and a lot of time to hand stuff those. And sometimes on the undersized decals, we do have to hand stuff them, but we try to use this machine as much as possible to make it efficient.
All right, so we're almost to the very end, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And pretty much get wrapped up into bins and ready to be sold out on retail.
Our final leg of the tour of the Microscale facilities. And Scott, I just want to mention we're over here in the shipping area, and I see a lot of bins filled with decals. How many decals do you guys got here?
We have about 4,000 SKUs
Wow.
decals in our production line.
That is awesome. And so whenever the orders come through, you're able to come over here, pick them right out of these bins. They're so organized like that.
Yep, we have a pick list, and we pull them from the pick list, and then we get them ready to ship all around the world.
And that's the beauty of having these numbers on it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And that's
excellent.
a very popular decal you got there.
Yeah, it is. BNSF, love it. Love the colors on that. Beautiful. All right, and then I just wanted to mention, so each month you talked about earlier where you come out with a new set of decals.
Right.
Okay, so I see that in the month of May, you came out with this, the TP and W, Toledo, Peoria, and Western. So HO scale, N scale.
N scale.
All right, so you
yeah.
bring them out at the same time.
Exactly.
Okay, and then in the month of June, we have the Ferromex.
Exactly.
Excellent. So at the filming of this right now, this is actually going to be released this next month.
Yes, this will be available this Saturday.
Excellent. All right, so we got to see that ahead of time. And finally, to complement everything, so we have the finishing aspects of your solutions here. So tell us a little bit about what we have in these packages.
Well, this is a system pack. It covers all of our finishing solutions for decaling a model. Our two very popular products are Set and Sol. Set is a product that preps the surface before you put the decal. Sol is a phenomenal product that softens the decal around rivets, ridges, bends, curves, you name it. Whatever's on the model, that thing will have the decal conform beautifully to the model. And then we have other solutions. We have a liquid decal film that will restore old decals. So if you have a really old decal that's not available anymore, you can try to restore it with liquid decal film. It gives it some extra strength. Liquid tape is for temporary adhesions of if you just want to see how your model's coming together before you make the final gluing. Crystal Clear is a great product for making windows on passenger cars or small windows in airplanes or any model that needs a tiny window. And it will dry crystal clear and look like a window. Metal foil adhesive is, you could put this directly on any type of foils and then apply it to your model so you have a real metallic finish to your product. Micro Mask is like masking tape, but liquid form. So if you want to, like I'm painting a cockpit right now and I don't want only certain parts, so I put this on the parts I don't want paint and then I can paint and it peels right away. Set and solid covered, and then the top coatings, we have a gloss, micro gloss, a micro flat, and a satin finish that you can put over the top of the decals to seal the decals and make sure it can handle on your model for the years into the future.
Excellent. So a full line of products to help in all of your finishing needs for our models. And certainly I'm sure many in our audience have used a lot of these, if not all of them. All available at microscale.com?
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, I can tell you, Scott, it's been a pleasure coming out here to you.
It's been a great pleasure talking to you.
Explaining to us this process and what goes in behind the making of our decals. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, I think there's a little bargain hunter in all of us. So if we ever have the opportunity, as we mentioned, to be at a train show or a garage sale or a swap meet, or maybe even just trading trains with one of our friends at a local club, we're always looking for that deal. Sometimes people think brass and they think everything's worth $1 million and you're not going to get a deal. But sometimes there might be some legitimately great offers out there. In this segment, what we're really going to focus on, as we mentioned, is how to quickly identify the value of a model. It's not going to be exact because there's just so many variables in all the different models. And though we may hope to find that rare hand-built, and we'll eventually talk about that, that's extremely unlikely. So today I just want to spend a few minutes going over with you, when I have a chance to have to quickly identify models, some of the measures I take to ensure that hopefully there's not damage that I overlook in a hurry to make a decision. One of the first things, though, we want to look at, and maybe you know your prototype extremely well of the road you collect, but a good indicator that maybe there's something wrong is if you see the engine and the tender are two totally different colors. That's a kind of a red flag that you may be dealing with mismatched locos and tenders. Maybe that tender is somewhere else on the table and you can match it up, but that's the first buyer beware sign. That often happens in certain estates. People may mix things up, and that could dramatically adversely affect the value of your model. A second thing you want to do is just quickly look for damage. The main areas you're going to see damage normally very fast is the cab roof. If it's been dropped, it always seems like that cab roof ends up getting bent. That's not an easy fix. It's not impossible, but it's going to dramatically adversely affect the value of the model. The second area you're going to generally see if it's dropped, if it lands face first, the pilot is going to be bent in. Sometimes the pilot's just loose and it's an easy fix. It's generally an easier fix than a cab roof, or a cab certainly, but it's something you want to look for. Even if there's been shipping damage, it's normally going to happen right there in the pilot. So take a look for that. Then just kind of look quickly down the lines, along the running boards, along the valve gear. See if anything seems askew. You can do that really quickly. You can even turn the loco upside down, kind of follow those lines, and see if it looks straight or not. Then you want to take a look and try to see if any details are missing. Normally that's going to be first and foremost the headlight, which appears to be missing on this model. Not only is the smoke box cover painted gray, which is kind of like a red flag that somebody's been playing with it along the line, but there is no headlight on this model. That's a red flag that it's not worth a lot. In this particular model, also these cylinders, they seem a little off to me, so I would be cautious. This has lots of red flags to me. So those are some things you want to look out for, but don't just look to see if an item is dented in the cab or the pilot. Look for foam damage. Sometimes foam damage is super, super obvious because it's all over the model. But sometimes if the model was wrapped in plastic, but there was still bad foam, where you're going to see that foam damage seeps in generally is under the cab roof, generally right behind the cab, again along the pilot. Those are like areas where it always seems to get to it. So be on the lookout for that. As far as the tender, a lot of times there's foam damage, again, it's right on the front or maybe the back, but again, picture it being wrapped up and picture that foam kind of like seeping in through the open ends if it was stored that way. So you're going to have to look for that. On this tender, see, I noticed this shiny spot where something was done. Most likely, maybe a reverse light was removed or some sort of detail was removed. So that's kind of a heads up that there might be an issue. Now, if you see a model and it looks really good, then great. If you turn it upside down, in this case, this is a newer run model, we can quickly see that it was made by Ajin in Korea. That's going to quickly identify that as a little more valuable than this particular model. But we don't want to get into that too much today. That's just kind of our first quick look at how to glance over that model and quickly look for perhaps any missing details, any types of dents or dings. Again, you'd want to do that down the tender. If you see a dent in the brass, especially in the boiler or the tender, just realize that's going to be a major problem going forward, so you don't want to overpay for those models. Next time, we're going to go a little bit more into quickly identifying if a model's likely a newer run and more valuable, or likely an older run and less valuable. I hope these tips help you out. And now we're going to go over and we are going to see how Boyd and Juan are doing back out in California. One of the great things about brass is how you can modify it. And even sometimes what seems like at first eye a pretty great model, in the hands of a talented person who can modify it, it's really amazing how it becomes a work of art. Now I got two guys sitting on either side of me today, Juan Zuloage, Boyd Reyes, who are both amazing at how they can really take a already magnificent piece and just bring it to a whole nother level and really be like a one-off piece. So let's talk, Juan, with you first. Tell us what's on the turntable here and what you did to it to really bring it up to your increasingly high standards.
Well, when the Berlin Locomotive Works were delivered, this is a custom brass model. I obviously, I liked the model. I was very impressed with a lot of the features of the new model. So I brought my custom brass out and said, let me take a look and compare them. And it really fell short. And I was really disappointed with the custom brass at that moment and realized all the flaws that it had. And, we spent good money on them, but the advantage we have, obviously, it's a brass model and we're all modelers. So the good thing about brass, it unsolders and everything can be corrected and new appliances can be added and all sorts of new details can be given to the model to bring it up to par with the new models that are existing today. Even some of the new models that, let's say, came in the 90s and early 2000 still weren't 100% up to par. And I even improved those by, bringing in new details such as new frames and that were non-existent. They wanted these things to operate on 18-inch radiuses, which most modelers today have minimum 36-inch radiuses and can operate nice brass. I've always, this is another Overland piece that looks great right out of the box, but as you will, one of the things that began to drive me crazy was Overland always left plenty of room underneath there, and there's no ash pan, no detail for the model. On this Overland, as you can see, let's say my standards have increased. Now I add the ash pan and the new frame rails so that area, when you look at the model running at eye level, all that area is covered just like it would be on the prototype. And the best thing about, like I said, you have old brass. This is an M64 from Overland. And then, all of our old key pieces, which were very nice pieces, a lot of people think, oh, those aren't any longer to standards, they're not worth the quality anymore. They're very affordable, yet you can bring them up to the standards of the Overland piece, and all it really takes is just adding all of the appliances and going above what even Overland did. Even on the Overland, as you notice, I replaced, you can notice by some of the parts that are brass, I'm putting lighted number boards. I'm going to put lit class lamps, and I've changed the pile headlamp. A lot of the handrails have been redone, and this one had a complete makeover with everything that's being done to it. And it's an older model, but yet, you know what? It'll look, once it's all painted, it'll look exactly like its sister, who was much better. So I'll have my quality. I'm never losing any money because of the ability to solder and unsolder pieces, which I think is phenomenal on brass, because we're all builders in this model world, and we know what happens when we go to glue a plastic piece. Once it's glued, you can't unglue it. Brass models give us the fortunate ability to, if that piece isn't right, you can unsolder it and replace it with a new part, and you still have a great model.
So Juan, what are some of the tools you would say are must-haves if a modeler kind of wants to have the ability to take this model to another level?
Resistant solder that are sold by PBL, Hot Tips, those are highly recommended. Get the hottest one. I have two of them. One for just the tweezers, which is for fine work detail, and one for heavy, which is the probe. And it's easier for me than be switching them on the thing. So I do have two of those. And that's pretty much it. Also, I highly recommend is one of the temperature sensors irons, that is used in electronics. Obviously, everything is nicely to tin it before you go and solder it in. I tin all my pieces, which makes the soldering much easier to apply on your models.
And now in this piece, you were mentioning like some of the changes you made. Just briefly, did you say you even like changed the cylinders and so forth?
Back in the old days when this model was done, I think when the 60s maybe or 50s,
Later, but still, yeah.
or 70s, when that model came out, they narrowed the front cylinders. They had them really narrow so that the front pilot trucks would be able to swing between them and wouldn't short on the rails because they were intended to run on very sharp radiuses. The rear trailing truck had the frame would go into the firebox area, and the trailing truck was all free there, so there was absolutely, would never ever short out. The tender was, just bad information on the developer or the builder at that time, and they didn't quite get the proportions right, which was later corrected. So all of these corrections were done by me, including the frame rail, as no different than I've done on this model. Rebuilding that whole bottom half of the frame rail with the ash pans so they sit up to par with some of the Glacier Parks and the Berlins of today, which are by far one of the best models out there right now.
Yeah, we love them too. Now, one other thing that people will quickly pick up on, after all that work's done, you have to paint and weather. So how did you learn, and do you have any tips for that process?
Painting and weathering is, once you're finished with your solder work, painting is always cleanliness. The first thing you have to do is you have to clean all of your solder off of there, make sure everything is off, and then dip the model. I dip it in lacquer thinner, which basically I don't recommend everybody do that, but it's a good cleaning solution. And then I'll use gloves. Please wear gloves anytime you're using any type of solvent. And let the model dry. Try and get all of it as clean as possible. You can also bead the models with a very light beading. You have to be careful, so it gives it a tooth. So when you apply, I use paints that require a primer. There are paints out there such as Scale Coat that does not require a primer. The reason I don't use Scale Coats is not because it's a bad paint. It's because it doesn't lend itself to my techniques of weathering, which are washes, and all of my washes are solvent-based. So any solvent-based wash would obviously attack the scale coat paint immediately. So I have to start with a strong solvent paint. So all of my models are painted with a lacquer-based paint, such as Star Brands or automotive lacquers.
Sure. So we've seen like a lot of painters use slightly different techniques, different paints, but like what you become comfortable with, like you say, lends to your particular style. Now the weathering itself, is that a pretty involved process?
The weathering are washes, and it's multiple washes. It's not just one wash. You basically, you're washing, you pour dirt on the model, and what I mean by that is a dirty wash on the model, and then you begin to wipe it off and clean off the model, and then obviously there's always residue that you're not going to be able to get off. You're going to, they're going to stick into the cracks and into the crevices, and it starts to build up after 2 or 3 applications. Once you get it to a point where you're kind of satisfied with the first wash, I clear it with an automotive clear, or a lacquer-based clear, which will act as a barrier. Now, there are new paints coming out that we're definitely destined to try them out because we want to get away from the solvents and go more to the acrylics. But at the moment, I haven't been as successful as I have with the solvent-based paint. So once I get the barrier on there, I again do a dirty wash again, and again start back to washing away some of the everything I don't want on there, and it keeps building up and building up to the point where some areas I try to keep clean. This one is really, really dirty, and it was done purposely that way due to the fact that it was I have a photo of the engine, and it was so dirty that you couldn't even see the lettering on it. And sometimes there's a give and take between photographs and models. So if I did it too dirty, my modeling friends would say, oh, that's just way overdone. So you have to take a modeler's license on certain things and have your limitations on it.
Yeah, there's a preference to it for sure. Now I want you to think back to when you first started doing this kind of work. What would you say to encourage maybe one of our viewers that finds it very daunting or feels like they could never accomplish something like this?
Never. I was always very, very interested in doing this. And I watched friends who had the quality. And the only good thing I can tell them is don't be afraid. Yeah. You just go at it. If you want, start with earlier projects like, some of the more affordable models. You could start there. And yes, you're going to make mistakes, but remember, that's the beauty of brass. Even if you make a mistake, you can always clean off the solder and start over again. This is not a plastic model that if you ruin its finish, it's done. When I first started, I wasn't a very good solderer, and it took me a while to get the technique until I started to develop the ability to get, very fine soldering. And obviously there's people who are superior than I am and they're jewelers because they use a torch. And torch work by far is superior to using resistant solder. So if you're a torch guy, my hat's off to you. I haven't done it because I don't want to set my house on fire yet.
Yeah, and most of the guys, we've talked to even that do use the torch still find like it's just a tool. There's still a time for resistant soldering, like you say. There's time for the different tools. But yeah, that's pretty cool. And one thing I found interesting looking at your collection, which is full of beautiful pieces, is you're not even now afraid to, if it's a newer model that has some value to it, you're so comfortable working on it that you're confident it's going to be something you can work on.
Every time I get a model, I don't care who it's from, I look at photographs. And I know the builder does the importer does their due diligence to try and get everything perfect, but there's always going to be mistakes and flaws at times. And I, as a modeler, want to perfect my model and also separate it from quote unquote the rest of them. I want mine to be above what, let's say, the production models would be. I take it to the next level where I believe the model can be. And there's absolutely, this is a perfect example. This was a factory painted model, and you could see it's brass, so it's really easy to scrape off parts, and it's really easy to just touch up in certain areas, not having to repaint the entire model all over again. Like this one, for example, did not have the apron. It now has an apron. It didn't have an ash pan. It now has the ash pan. So many little things like that, which obviously are going to enhance the beauty of the model and make it to be a museum quality model, which is really what you want.
Yeah, and you say the words real easy. We might not feel that way, but it's great to see that ultimately, as you get better and better at it, that's how it feels. Well, thanks, Juan. We have another guy here. I'm going to have you slide your model off our turntable. And somebody our viewers are getting pretty well acquainted with, Boyd Reyes. And Boyd, talk about how you do something similar, but obviously your specialty and your love and passion seems to really be for passenger cars.
Yeah, there's a union line. He does the steam engines, and I'm passenger. I've always stayed with passenger. There's just so much to know. And there's guys who specialize in diesels. And
can I put one of these on the turntable?
Yeah, put that one on there. Yeah.
And talk about some of the things that you do.
Well, on this car, the Silver Splendor, this is a private car. It runs on Amtrak. And the route that this one, it's usually through Southern California, from San Diego all the way to Santa Barbara. They run special trips.
Have you ever got to ride on that car?
Yes, I have.
Oh, nice.
I've been to Denver, Colorado in that one. Up to San Francisco to Denver, Colorado. I've traveled up and down California several times in that, and it's a blast. I mean, you'll never ride it. It's like going in a jet. You'll never ride in coach, you know. It's like, yeah, this is the way to go with the open vestibules. And this is it. I mean, exactly the way it is. They'll hook it up to the rear of Amtrak, and we hang out back here, take pictures. And like on this model, I opened up the vestibule windows. That's the way they run it, with the windows open. And the interior, custom interior with the dome, with the I don't know if you can see the tables in there with the table settings. And
I see the forks and knives and spoons.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Up there in that dome car, they serve dinner up there. And down below is all the lounge area with sofas, and there's a kitchen on board. And Yeah, that interior, that used to be a Burlington chair car that ran
Shoreham
on
Shops, was
Shoreham
it?
Shops,
Yeah,
yeah.
started life as.
And I think it was like Silver Buckle, but now it's been changed to Silver Splendor, and with the
Right.
interior changed. The bottom, like I said, it's a lounge, and upstairs it's another lounge, but they usually use it for dining purposes up there.
Yeah.
And that car, I've become very good friends with the owner, and I've had a lot of memories on that thing.
Have
And,
you made one of these for him?
Yes, he owns 2 of them. He's got twin boys, and he had to get them both covered, make
that's
sure that they
nice.
both each get one. And we've used them for, I used a Broadway Limited one for a cake.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a cake, and so he wanted that thing on as a cake decoration on top. So
Plastic's cake decoration,
plastic-
brass is like
he might have-
treasures for his children.
Exactly, and stuff. Yeah, this particular model, I had to have one. I think I only made 4 of them
Right.
in existence. Yeah, but yeah,
it's
I enjoy
beautiful.
this car. One day we all have to ride on there.
You
know, it's
wouldn't
like-
have to ask me even once.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about any of these other cars a little
Yeah,
bit?
here's the Regal Lane. That's going to be one of Coachyard's products coming out. I made this a while back. That's for off the Santa Fe Superfleet. And this car, yeah, it has all the custom appliances underneath. And that was rebuilt, I think in 89 or 90. But all 6 sleepers were rebuilt. And that's the one that ran from Los Angeles all the way to Chicago. That's a
Yeah, very nice
Really,
car.
yeah,
and I
very
know you're
unique.
not afraid to change out window locations.
No,
or-
cutting in cars, cutting skirts, cutting out windows, no problem. I
Yeah.
mean, it just, yeah.
And you're kind of like Juan. You don't care if it's a Challenger Imports or what it is. You're so comfortable.
It's-
like
it-
chopping into brass. You know it's going to be a beautiful project when you're done with it.
I've cut up numerous cars. Yeah, no problem cutting them up. You know,
Yeah.
I am afraid of steam. You know, and Juan, yeah, we both have to. You know, I'll help him out, and he helps me out. I have no idea about those black things over there.
Nor do I those. I won't cut those. As I work on brass, I won't touch those.
yeah.
I always
don't
go,
blame
yeah,
you.
that's easy, and I hear him. I'm like, wow.
Well, I appreciate both y'all's skills.
Yeah.
Now, Boyd, you're wearing a yellow shirt, so let's show.
Sure, Union Terminal.
We got to do a little shout out to UTI. We don't want that
this
to
is
roll off
one of
there.
their E units that was
This
released,
came
and there
out
was only a
pretty
few
recent
of them.
release, right?
Yes, there were only a few, and I just thought it'd be a neat thing to show.
Yeah.
For those who missed out, I really, really, really want to put the word out there that your show has, with these announcements of brass coming out, it's the best thing now, you know. And when you do hear it, put in your reservation, because when these things come out, it's not like the old days where they announced it, they showed up at the stores, and there were plenty of stores that had these things in stock, and you'd go look at it and go, okay, I'll take it. Now it's no longer impulse,
Right,
because
right.
you have to get in there and make your reservation. If you think you want it, you better put in your reservation.
Yeah, and there's
Because,
some of the
yeah.
stuff coming out now is so good that I mean, people just aren't upset when they reserve it. Like you say, it's just
Yeah,
sometimes
it's
being
just-
aware of what's coming out, which we feel the Monday Morning Express has been a great avenue for that type of education.
Yeah, I remember walking inside stores and there would be the flyers on the walls or what's coming out next. Yeah, those days are over. You know, now it's your show. That's where we have to tune in and find out what's coming down the pike.
And having talented guys like the two of you being on it helps quite a bit, I must say.
Yeah.
Well, thanks,
Really,
guys.
yeah.
Appreciate your great work. Thanks, Boyd, for all your
Thank you, Dan.
hospitality. Juan,
Thank you
Keep
very
up the
much.
great job.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Monday Morning Express. Hey, I got a question for you, Roland. Why are all these full? Oh, wait, that one's got a little something out of it.
Very little in it. That means more and more work need to be done, and I need to order a little bit more. And I'm looking forward to it right after the show, getting back to the paint booth.
Yeah, that's good. I think you still got a Frisco engine you got to strip and paint.
Yes, I do. From last season, right?
Yeah, from last season. That's going to be fun. Of course, stripping might be like a 5-part process on
Yes,
that because it
yes.
was on there pretty good. Well, anyways, next week we're going to go back to Boyd, right?
Yeah, we're going to see about how to do some touch-up, and that's been a question on the minds of some of our viewers, is how to do some touch-up, and Boyd's going to really help us with that. Looking forward to that.
Great. I know we got some nice feedback when we were out there with Fred Hill at the Whistle Stop. Such a cool store, as we mentioned. But next week, we're going to take you back out to Fred Hill, only this time we're not at the original Whistle Stop. He actually invited us into the coach yard. It's really, I think, pretty neat spot in there. So they're going to enjoy some of the interaction we had with him, and we had Jerry Spolma there with us for a little bit.
Great guy. You know, speaking of decals, and a guy who's an excellent painter, Jerry Spolma himself, and of course Fred's wife Judy. Again, hospitable people. We just loved our visit at the coach yard, so we're looking forward to that.
And we've already had some feedback on the How To with Hal, right?
Absolutely. So thank you so much for all of your suggestions last week. We've got actually customers sending emails from Germany and other places around the world, the U.S. of course, situations that you perhaps have encountered and how to fix or repair a certain problem. So we're going to look forward to addressing those with Hal. He's got his work cut out for him, I can tell you that. But keep sending in the questions, again, in the subject line, How To with Hal, to MME@brasstrains.com, and we'll try to get that on the show in coming weeks.
Yeah, we say it a lot, but that feedback, don't stop giving it to us, because it really keeps us motivated, and it really does affect what you see on the show. And I know Hal's going to be that much more motivated to keep coming up here and keep sharing that when he gets that, sees that nice feedback as well. Well, thanks for joining us again on Monday Morning Express. It was a great episode, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.